Catherine's very familiar. She actually helped us the last go around, and we appreciate her throughout this year as working with the utility stakeholders. And so she's here tonight to actually present the final report on the utility rate study. So thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Let's see. Do I have to point it up there or?
No, you can just,
No?
it should just work.
Oh, I did not check if it was on. Oh, there we go. Okay. No, I still need it.
Is the clicker on? Is it plugged in? There we go. We just need to flash the lights a little bit first, so.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. See? If you flash the lights, everything works.
There we go.
And also plug in the USB there.
Okay. So I'm just going to shuffle around a little bit because I have a hard time seeing all the way over there. Okay, so thank you for having me again. I do just want to put this slide up at the very beginning because we've been working with the Utility Stakeholders Committee. We've had a couple of really great meetings with them explaining the whole process of the utility study and getting some input and feedback from them. And this slide is important because there are some small changes between the last Stakeholder Utility Committee meeting we had and the rates that were presented at that meeting and what's shown tonight in the presentation. So the reason for this is that I discussed with staff after the meeting the implementation schedule and really felt that there needed to be a little bit more time built in for more public workshops and having sufficient opportunity for people to give their feedback, general public to give their feedback. So an additional 3 months were built into the calendar for adoption, and the different noticing and participation includes the City Council meeting introducing proposed rates, and that's this evening. And again, there'll be another meeting, I think, on December 17th to actually take the rates forward. Then a public notice is mailed to every owner of record. That's every single property owner that pays the bill. Then there would be public workshops in English and Spanish and Punjabi explaining what the rate changes are. And then finally, there would be a public hearing to adopt the new utility rates, and there would be an ordinance with a second reading as well. So just to be sure there's sufficient time built in for all of these things to take place. So the effects of the additional 3 months are the first rate changes would be on the May bills. When I was talking to the Stakeholder Utility Committee, we had talked about the first changes being on the February bills. So that's an additional 3 months. And then subsequent changes would be on the January bills rather than the February bills. So what happens then is there's a little bit more revenue needed. Yeah.
Just for public, Mayor Pro Tem is now in attendance at 7:07. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So just to be really transparent, what I did was I put slides with updated in red on the slide. That means that slide has changed since the Stakeholder Committee meeting. So for anybody who's been following the meetings to date, they can see the changes. All right, I'm going to start out with the sanitation rate study. That's garbage or trash services. So the findings of this study is that the solid waste rates pay for the Jilton contract and for city-provided services. About 80% of the revenues pay for the Jilton contract. The other portion of the revenues pay for city-provided services, such as street sweeping. The current fee collections are greater than the operating costs, and this fund has built up a 9-month operating cost reserve. This could be lowered to a prudent reserve level of 4 months. So you might ask, why are reserves higher than was projected in the last rate study? Two main reasons. The first is that there's been slightly lower expenses than were projected. The Jilton contract expenses were a little bit higher, but the city costs were a little bit lower. And also, there's a little bit of money built in each year for expenditure on upgrades and new equipment, and less was spent than was thought might be needed. The second thing is that there's been greater revenues than were projected, and this is largely because there was a greater growth in the number of services than we projected 5 years ago. The revenue requirement, this is the amount of money that needs to be collected each year from the fees. It includes all of the costs to operate this fund, and there's some credits from payments from other governments, some late fees, interest, and so forth. So as I said, about 75 to 80% of the costs each year are paid to Jilton for their contract. Their contract increases each year by the Consumer Price Index and or increased landfill costs with Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority, plus the growth in the number of customers. So here's a graph showing what the revenue requirement is projected to be of the next 5 years. So for this fiscal year, it's projected to be just over $1.3 million, and to increase over the next 5 years to just over $1.8 million. And the different colors on the bars show what the different costs are for. The orange is the contract with Jilton, so that's most of the cost. The blue is personnel, that's staff time here. And then there's other costs as well. So the black line shows how much is currently collected in fees, and then the blue line shows how much is projected to be needed to be collected in fees. And that's what the rates are calculated on. Okay. So with the increase in the user fees, the city can address Senate Bill 1383. The rates would cover the revenue requirement, and there's also $100,000 each year for additional spending on Senate Bill 1383. The difficult thing is that this Senate bill has not yet been fully fleshed out with the state and exactly how it's going to work. What we do know is that there will be significant costs to the city to implement it. This is with regards to mostly food waste with commercial customers, and they are going to be required to have organics bins and more separation. There's a lot of enforcement, inspection services. There will be additional consultant services. And it's quite likely that the city may look into hiring a position to oversee the implementation of the Senate bill.
Just one comment on there, Catherine,
Yeah.
for the council and the public. So staff has been actually looking at SB 1383, and we're kind of in a unique circumstance here in Merced County because we have, a JPA, which is our our regional rates authority, and so this might be something that that the JPA might look at, providing regional services for. And so we haven't explored it with Stacy and MCAG, but that might be something that's something that we're going to look at proposing to them and see if there might be something regionally here in Merced that might like to tackle this big issue.
Okay, so on the screen you can see what the most common service rates are today and what they would increase to. There is no increase proposed in the first year. So this is the slide that was presented to the stakeholders. You can see at the top there the implementation date still says January 2020. And I kept this slide in again for transparency, but I'm actually going to talk about the slide, this slide, because this is the updated slide. So you can see there at the top, the implementation date would be May 2020 instead of the January. So rates would stay the same for that first year, and then they would increase gradually by 3.5%, 4%, 4.5%, 5%, as shown on the top. Underneath the multifamily and commercial, there is a new organics bin rate. It's unknown at this time how many services will be required to take that, so that's not built in yet, but there is a rate that's established for that service. And this is the projected cash balance for the solid waste fund. You can see in blue that, like I said earlier, it has a very healthy cash balance currently. That cash balance would be drawn down over the next 5 years, largely to pay for SB 1383. So although the rates go up, the cash balance is still coming down. Okay. Moving on to the domestic wastewater. Again, the current fee collections are greater than the operating costs. The wastewater fund has about 5 months of operating costs in reserve, and that's good. That's at a very good level right now. It's not as high as the solid waste, but it's good and healthy. There is a need to increase the rates for projected costs, and there's also a need to adjust rates to reflect cost of service changes. So an important thing, California law, when you change utility rates, you need to demonstrate that you're doing your best to charge customers according to the amount of the service that they're receiving. And what's happened in the last 5 years is the city has grown, and you've had a lot more commercial customers. You've got another hotel in town, and they have different strength wastewater. So part of this study is looking at that cost of service and how that changes. Revenue requirement, again, it's the amount of money that has to be collected each year. It includes the operating costs, equipment and vehicle purchases, sewer line replacement. There is no new debt service anticipated for this fund. And then there are a few credits taken into account. This is the revenue requirement projection. This has been updated. So again, different costs are shown by different colors in the graph. So blue is the operating expenses minus those few credits. The orange is existing debt service, again, no new debt service. The gray is system rehabilitation and new capital improvement projects. But really, for the sewer fund, it's mostly about replacement and looking after what you already have. And then the yellow is the need for some reserve and contingency, particularly because a portion of the commercial and industrial revenues are based off of how much water they use, and that varies from year to year. We need to make sure there's a contingency in this fund. So current fees shown as that black line. So total revenue requirements projected to increase from $2.4 million to $3.2 million. This graph shows how much it costs to serve different customer groups in the community. And so the rates are built to reflect this cost differential. It's most expensive to treat wastewater from the light industrial customers, and least expensive to treat the water from the churches and temples and schools and residential customers. So I've already mentioned there's been a shift in the commercial base, so the model has been updated to reflect that. And what it causes in that first year of change is for some customer rates to go up by more than other customers. After that first year change, there is a level percentage increase for everybody each year thereafter, but for the first year, it's different for different customer groups. To smooth out the increase a little bit for some of the customers, I took the midpoint between current rates and the 2021 rates. Here is the calculated rate schedule that was presented to the stakeholders. Again, I don't want to talk about this slide right now, but I wanted it to be included for transparency. So the effects of that increase in 3 months is increased rates from what was presented to the stakeholders and a slightly higher projected cash balance in the future years. So here is the projected rates. Starting in May of 2020, for a residential customer, the bill would increase from $43.84 to $45.99. And then it increases each year after that. You can see for every customer group that the rates increase each year. Here's the projected cash balance. It is a target of 4 months of operating expenses in the fund. That's that orange line. It's not set in stone. That's just a good range to be around that 4 months. It's projected that for the next 2 fiscal years that the fund would probably be just a little bit shy of that, but then it would increase over the next 4 years after that and stay in a good, healthy zone. Here's a graph showing a comparison of the wastewater bills for a residential customer in Livingston and with several neighboring communities. So currently, the wastewater bill is pretty much in the middle of this range, and it is projected to stay in the middle of the range. With these graphs, they're always a snapshot in time, so just to keep in mind that there might be another community that's also going through a rate study, and their rates might change. This table is included in the rate study to give an idea of what the state considers to be an affordable bill. So currently, the wastewater bill is less than 1% of monthly household income, and the state would consider that to be affordable. They consider anything really 1.5% and below to be very affordable. So with the change in the rates in May, the bill would be just a little over 1% of median household income. This graph compares a residential unit and a church and the current rates and the projected rates. So you do see a little bit of a shift here. So currently the residential unit rate is a little bit higher than for the church. That shifts a little bit, and that's due to the change in the cost of service. I know it might seem odd to have a gas station and a middle school on the same slide. The reason why I did it is because of the scale. So it can get really difficult to try and match up ones that you would think would go well together because it's very difficult to show it on the screen. So just to give you an idea, here's the middle school. It would go from about $15,000 currently up to $22,000 over the next 5 and a bit years. And here's a convenience store and a hotel. You do see the hotel rate going up. There's quite a jump there in that first year compared with some of the other customer groups. Again, that's because of the strength of the wastewater and how many hotel rooms there are now in the city. Okay. We got one more. All right. So on to the water rate study. Okay. In the water fund, the current fee collections are deliberately greater than operating costs. So 5 years ago, when we worked on the rate study, there were a lot of capital improvement projects that were identified as needed. And there still is a large number of projects that need to be completed. So not everything that was identified 5 years ago has been completed in these 5 years. So there is what looks like a large cash reserve in the water fund, but I'll demonstrate that that is anticipated to be eaten up. So the total anticipated CIP plan is $24.5 million over the next 5 years. A point I wanted to make is that this city is a little bit different from a lot of Central Valley communities I work with, in that you have an industrial customer that keeps the water use steady throughout the year, much more steady than in most other communities. And that is a real positive for the city in many ways. One of the more tricky things is that they are responsible for 65% of the revenue stream. So just keeping that in mind as I work through the study. There's no proposed changes to the rate to the rate structure. I did look at water use customer patterns, and it's still following the same kind of patterns as we saw before. This is a summary of the CIP costs that are anticipated. So there's a lot of work needed to be done with the wells, conveyance and treatment, also a large water line replacement project, some irrigation at the park, and you can see the total is $24.5 million. There is one well that is proposed to be paid for by Foster Farms, and that would be in an agreement with the city. The city already has got one SRF loan in place, the $4 million loan, and it's anticipated that there would be 2 more SRF loans with the state, one for well 8 and 9 and one for well 13 and 17. Okay, so same thing for the revenue requirement. In addition to increasing the operating costs 4.5% per year, there's going to be additional costs for operations and maintenance of the new wells. And there will also be new debt service for those SRF loans that I mentioned. So here is a graph showing the projected revenue requirement going from $4 million in this fiscal year, but you can see this bounces up and down. And the reason for that is the CIP projects and how much needs to be cash funded in each year. So again, the different colors represent the different types of expenditures. So the dark blue is the operating expenditures. The light blue is system rehabilitation. The yellow is debt service. You can see the debt service there getting bigger as you add the new projects. And then orange is collection for depreciation. So the blue line shows what's currently collected in fees, and the orange line shows how much is included to calculate the rates. You don't want your rates to be going up and down each year. You want them to be more smooth over time, and just make sure you can cover all these costs over time. Just a point of note on the cost of service, just like in the wastewater fund, I had to demonstrate that the city is meeting cost of service to different customer groups. In the exercise, in the rate study, it goes through what's called a functional allocation. It splits up the cost between what is fixed costs around the system and how much is variable costs due to how much people use the water system. And that resulted in 45% of the costs that would be put into the monthly service charge. The actual rate design puts 35% of the costs in the monthly service charge. And this is just like we discussed it in 2014, 15 in great length. This is largely because you have that one customer that is bringing in 65% of the revenues, and they don't have many meters, but they use a lot of the water. So it really makes more sense to keep your monthly service charges a little lower. So study results are the monthly service charges and the use charges increase for all customer categories. The monthly meter replacement fee is reduced for 3 size meters. All of the other monthly meters fees increase. I will make a note there that in the utility committee meeting, I only had the 10-inch meter on that slide, but I noticed that I had omitted the 1.5-inch and the 3-inch meters. And the reason why those 3 sizes decrease a little is because when I do the rate studies, I always ask the city and the city's meter suppliers to give me the actual numbers. How much does it actually cost you to replace these meters? And for those 3, and I don't know why, but those prices decreased a little, so in comparison to the other meters costs. Another thing that's changed is the use rate for the construction water increases proportionately more than the other fees, and that's due to a change in methodology. I wanted the city's construction water to be more in line with how other cities charge in the Central Valley. And just as a word of note, construction water is not a property-related fee. It's not something that you have to put on the public notice, but it would still be in your rates. And then the current cash reserves are drawn down for these capital projects. So this is the slide that was presented to the stakeholders. Again, I'm going to skip over it. But the reason, for having that additional 3 months built into the implementation calendar, the rates are now needed to be increased 4.5% each year rather than 4.25% each year. So this is the projected rates. So for a typical customer that would have a 1-inch size or smaller meter, the base charge would go up from $25.13 to $28.38, and then increase each year by 4.5%. And then there's also that meter fee, and so this is a charge that's specifically for the city to replace the meter when it exceeds its useful life, or when it might need some kind of technology update as well. So the service charge, that base monthly fee, allows a residential unit the attached residential unit 10,000 gallons a month. For most homes, they're detached, that'd be 25,000 gallons a month. And then for the non-residential, 35,000 gallons a month. That has not changed that's what you currently have. And then the consumption charge per 1,000 gallons of water in excess of that allowance would increase from $1.57 to $1.61 in May, and then the construction water would increase as well. Here's the projected cash balance. This is unrestricted cash versus a target of 6 months of revenues for the water fund. You can see there's a couple of years where it's possible that your total cash might be a little bit less than that target, but because you've got such big expenditures in these next few years, it's very hard to predict with your cash flow exactly which year you're going to be making payments and then receiving payments from the state as well. So this is kind of a best guess on the timing of things. If you did end up in a situation where you had a little bit more cash than was projected here, you can use that toward either lowering your debt service by doing partial prepayment with the state, or you might need it for some cost overruns, or you might put it towards depreciation and keep it in a separate fund specifically for that, restrict it. Here's an update of what the total bill would be for a residential home in the wintertime and the summertime, with an assumption of how much they use. So in the wintertime, most people will probably go up from just that base monthly charge of $28.18 to $31.59. That includes both the base charge and that meter fee. And then in the summertime, from a total of $43.88 to $47.73. This is the projected bill for a single-family home if they're using 25,000 gallons or less. So again, you can see it going up each year by 4.5%. Here's a comparison with neighbors and how much they pay each month. So Livingston, although there would be a rate increase, would remain at the lower end of the bills that are charged for water in this area. Again, just wanted to demonstrate what does that mean? How affordable is the water bill? Fully aware that affordable is different to different groups of people. So what I'm presenting here is what the state considers to be affordable when they give you loans. And currently, the water bill is about 0.64% of median household income. That would increase to just over 0.7%. So from the state's viewpoint at least, even with the rate increase, the water bill would still be considered affordable. And then thought it was really important to show what this impact would be for Foster Farms because they are your very large customer. So with this first change in rates, it would represent about a 3% increase to them. Of course, depends on exactly how much water they use, but that's about the impact. And they were present at the Stakeholder Utility Committee meetings. Okay, I have one final slide, and this shows what the combined utilities bill impact would be. So right now, for all three of these services, if you're using less than 25,000 gallons in the month, then you would pay $98.51. And in May, that would increase to $104.07. And then you can see it going up each year. I think that's the end of my slideshow.
Thank you, Ms. Hansford. First of all, I believe Councilmember Aguilar and Mr. Garcia were the subcommittee on this. Is that correct? Yes. So I'll start out with you folks. Do you wish to make any comments at this time?
I just want to say thanks to everybody from the community that participated in the process. I know as a community and resident of the city, I mean, of course, we don't want to raise the rates, and but with a lot of needed projects and all of that, everything was considered, and we came up with this solution.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't have anything.
Anything at this time?
No.
Okay, I just wanted, because you were the subcommittee, so what I'll do is I will start out with the public. Does anybody wish to come forward, ask questions, make comments? Everybody's happy with paying higher rates, I guess. Okay. I don't believe that, but that's fine, So, okay, if
I do have a few comments for the public and for the council. So in terms of next steps, just to outline it for everybody, the next step is at the next city council meeting, we'd be coming to council, asking council to begin the Prop 218 hearing process. And the 45-day period will start. We'll be sending out notices in Spanish, English, and Punjabi. We plan on having a series of workshops in the different languages as well. And so we'll just keep following that time frame. And again, the rates, unless council doesn't adopt it, will start in May of 2020.
And with that said, also, I mean, participation with the community is greatly appreciated, and I'm hopeful that members of the committee participate and attend. To me, just one quick observation was that compared to other communities, like the water rate, for example, it's lower, and so that was an interesting view. But yeah, hopefully we get participation from the public in general.
Thank you. And any other comments for you guys? Okay, unfortunately for me, not unfortunately, but fortunately, we had two of our subcommittee members there. So I'm a little bit not up to date as much as I was when I was on the subcommittee myself. So what I would like to do between now and then, unfortunately this came out a day before Thanksgiving break, so I wasn't able to come and ask staff. What I would like to have, and this can be emailed to everybody, whoever wants it, and is exactly, I know there was some increase in debt and service in different enterprises, just exactly what's the increases in debt service is, and as far as the CIPs, what are we proposing to do in those years? I would like to have that. It's critical that we tell the folks, yes, you're going to pay more, but here's what you're going to get get out of it as well. And also, I need to know those, before I act on the 218. I think it's very important. And, and also, there was some industrial water debt that's sitting out there, or that, I don't know, was that incorporated in this or not incorporated, or kind of,
No, that one actually it was not incorporated in here, and it's standalone because that's the industrial.
I get that,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
so, but those are kind of questions, information I need to have. Had I been part of it, I would have asked those questions, but you let the new folks take over too, So those some of the, and I'll have some more questions I can hand over to you tomorrow.
Perfect.
In preparation prior to the next meeting, So to see where we're gonna go with this. And also, people will always say we didn't. I think we need to at least put some sort of flyer out to people that we're gonna be talking about this at our next meeting. We should have done it this way, but unfortunately, due to holidays, because we need to put something there that says higher rates expected. I'm sure you get a full house in here, but it's good to get it out on the front end so we know what we're going to deal with, if anything, or, So I think we should at least have a meeting, let the public know before we even move forward to 218, just to see what they come up with as well. Okay, any, Councilmember Batista, anything? Mr. Gang? If not, Sanford, thank you, as always, good job. Okay, announcements and reports. I don't see our supervisors, so we'll go ahead and skip. We'll start out with staff announcements and reports. And in no particular order, let's get the fire department, since they're already standing up. Somebody wants to go home early. That's what it is.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jeremy Ron, Assistant Fire Chief on behalf of Mike Van Lobensel's Merced County Fire's Chief. Just want to take a couple minutes just to introduce you to our new battalion chief who will be serving your city as well as the Delhi community for the northern section of Merced County is Brian White. It's day 5 on the job, and he's working as a sponge, absorbing lots and lots of information, and we look very forward to working closely with the city and looking at some of those goals the city manager and I sat down and talked about, it seems not that long ago, on updating the agreement, for example, from 1993, and a lot of other things that we look forward to do. Brian White is not a stranger to Merced County. He actually worked at the Gustine Fire Station real closely with the city of Gustine for about 6 or 7 years, so he is familiar with relationships between Merced County Fire as well as the city fire that gets Merced County Fire support, if that all made sense. But I just wanted to come by and introduce Brian, and again, it's a pleasure working with all of you. And Brian is replacing Brocka Carter, who was in this position previous to Brian. So I just want to introduce Brian. I'm sure Brian has a few words. Brian.
Thank you, Chief. I really want to take an opportunity to say thank you, Chief, for introducing. This is my first time attending a city council meeting in this capacity, so there's some things for me to learn. I'm really looking forward to an opportunity to kind of start some relationships with all of you guys and really make my presence known in the community and really kind of outreaching out to the folks. I do have a lot to learn, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here tonight, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Now for the fire department. Oh, look, we'll go back to the chief. Anything to report? Fire department? No statistics, nothing, and that's it, huh? You're acceding to higher authority? Oh, okay. No, but it shouldn't matter because that's your job, isn't it, to report? I thought you wanted to impress them, No, is that what it was? I put him on the spot. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, recreation, Jackie?
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everybody dry. And I just have a few announcements concerning this week's activities. For those of you that have been following AccuWeather, there has been a 75, now up to 90% chance of rain on Friday. We know that electricity and rain don't mix well, and so there is a great possibility that Friday's festivities will be canceled. However, what we're hoping to do is the following Thursday is have the grand lighting of the trees and have hot cocoa and cookies and sing Christmas carols, and the band agreed that they would come out and play some music for us. So in the event that we do have to cancel on Friday, we do have a backup plan. So the other thing that I wanted to inform the public about is that as of January 31st, we have 3 seats coming up for our rec commission. And so application packets are now available at City Hall. If you're interested, you can pick one up or you can call the rec department. Any questions?
Council?
The corded trees, have they all been purchased?
They've all been purchased and they're in the back of a dump truck waiting for the ability to be able to put them
The way
up.
she said it, the dump truck.
I have a
The
quick
trailers, right.
quick question. Any word on the grant? Have we received any information?
Jose?
Yes, as it relates to the grant, Councilmember Aguilar is referencing Prop 68. So we did have thank you for actually, that was part of my, under my city manager's announcement. So I'll just jump in real quick. We actually had a visit by the state, so they interviewed us, and so that's a great sign. So we made it to the next round. So we should be expecting towards the end of this month, but given the holidays and stuff, and the state telling you that they're going to do it in December, it'll probably be in January. So so my hope is that we get an announcement sometime in January, because then it'll get really, really close to that date that you all know about, and so we have to figure that out. So we're going to be poking at the state and trying to see if we can get an answer a little sooner. So thank you for asking.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Public, any questions? If not, thank you. We'll go on to Public Works.
Shut the light off for me, please. Good evening, council, members of the public. Anthony Chavarria, Public Works, here this evening to present our monthly report. First department up is our operations department, which is our water and wastewater operations. The guys have been conducting day-to-day operations of the wastewater treatment plant, 4 well treatment sites, 5 chlorinated well sites, and 9 sewer lift stations. They've been testing backflows, conducting storm lift station maintenance, weekly, monthly sampling, and completion of monthly state reporting, repairing service line leaks, and reading meters. Here's some pictures of one of the operators pulling samples from the wellhead and conducting in-house lab testing. We're checking for chlorine residual levels, iron residual levels, arsenic, manganese, before and after treatment. Picture of one of our operators making sandbags for the community. This slide is sludge judge testing at our wastewater treatment plant. It's important that staff checks the sludge level in our clarifiers. It needs to be maintained at a certain level. If not left unchecked and it starts to accumulate and rise, the sludge, we have what's called carryover over the weirs, and it'll bring us into non-compliance with our discharge permit. Building maintenance, street department. Staff has been updating citywide truck route signage, various Measure V projects, maintenance on city buildings, right-of-way vegetation abatement, citywide signage replacement, filling potholes. We do encourage the community to call in potholes or any other concerns the community may have. It's difficult to inspect all the areas of the city, making the citizen concern forms an important tool for us. So if public sees anything out there in the street that needs to be addressed, feel free to call in. Here's a pothole filling project on Olive Avenue. This is a Measure V project.
Is that on the city side or on the county side?
It's on the city side.
Yeah, because I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, we did make sure that is on the city side. It's in, well, I wouldn't really call it a road, but
We need to pave our sides so we can.
there's another Measure V project. This is a sidewalk infill project on Patcher Street. You see the picture on the left, there was no sidewalk. Staff did pour new sidewalk to complete that portion. Another Measure V project in the works at Joseph Street and Virginia Avenue. You can see the lifted sidewalk in that picture presents a trip hazard, and it's not ADA compliant. Our Parks and L&D department. The staff has been conducting routine maintenance of all parks and LMDs, tree trimming, stump grinding, LMD renovations, field maintenance, and irrigation repair. Fallen tree at Max Foster Sports Complex. This is that day it was really, really windy out there. This is by the snack bar area.
Really nice tree.
Our fleet department. Staff has been conducting day-to-day service of all public works vehicles and equipment, service and repair of the police department patrol units, and the fire department equipment. Fleet department also works on special projects as assigned. Pretty talented guys. Here's one of the special projects. This again was that day it was really windy. We had the wind snap one of the bolts holding the sign up, and it was dangling out there in the street. Fleet department was out to the rescue. The recent rain events that we had, we did pretty good. It wasn't very much flooding, but we did have some issues in the Sun Valley subdivision area. We had too much rain, too quick. Filled up the storm drain basin and started to back up into the storm inlets in the streets, causing a little bit of flooding in the street. We did call MID to get permission to pump into the Carmichael lateral, which is right behind the basin. We did have to build a cofferdam on one side, so that's staff building that dam.
The reason for the cofferdam is that there's a dead end on that canal towards there's a home at the end of that canal as you look to your right.
Yes, that's correct, and that's just preventing any flooding in that road.
Hey, Anthony, most of our storm drains already have ability to pump into the MID, and this one doesn't?
No, this one, we rely on just percolation. There is no pumps at all.
Maybe we need to look into that.
Yeah.
Actually, I made, as soon as we got word that this was happening, we made contact with MID, and they actually did us a favor because they allowed us to go ahead and do this. We don't have an agreement for this particular part.
We need
And
a-
two, they didn't charge us, because there's typically a charge associated with being able to drain. And so that charge can be, you know, $1 or a month, or something like that. But anyways, we're looking at the options there, and so far, the best option would be to continue to drain into that canal versus having to enlarge that, or, you know,
Yeah,
buy
we definitely, you know, maybe
Need to look into
yeah.
pumpage there in the future, yes.
Yeah, so MID has been really, really great, so we appreciate.
So we're able to secure authorization to pump from that basin. We brought out our 6-inch portable pump. As you can see, it's pretty full. Right? It's bass fishing. This is one of the pictures as we're pumping into that lateral. That's the end of my report. Be happy to answer any questions from council.
Council
or
questions?
I got a
Public.
question. How deep is the park?
I believe
You were
that's
swimming in
about
there?
6 feet, somewhere around there. But at about the, it won't get that high because at 4.5 feet, we already started seeing water backing up into the storm inlets, causing water to come out in the streets.
Okay, council, any questions further? If not, public, any questions for Public Works? You guys are always out there, rain, sleet, snow, whatever, like
Yes,
most
sir.
people, you know? They're always out there. Thank you, Anthony, I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Engineering? Okay, finance, any reports? Okay, legal? Mr. Ramirez?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council, and public, there's a few things that I'd like to talk about today. One is, as you know, it's been quite a while that we've been trying to do everything that we can here locally to convince the decision makers as it relates to the ACE train to look at putting a platform here, because we think that that's going to really energize our downtown and really change the dynamics of Livingston if we have an ACE stoppage here. And so for those of you who are new, basically there's the ACE train that currently operates between San Jose and Stockton and Manteca, Lathrop area, are proposing to provide passenger rail service all the way out to Merced. So there's different stoppages, but they're either going to stop in Livingston or Atwater, not both. And so we've been doing everything that we can to, be seen and make the decision for the decision makers easy. So I've commissioned a study that was done by some professors at UOP to look at commuter numbers and so forth. We also programmed $640,000 towards the construction of the platform. And then not too long ago, we had that programmed that other money for the transit center in that same direction. I'm looking at making the presentation before their board in the very near future to show them how everything is interconnected, because I'm going to be talking about the 35 acres for the master planning, the specific plan for the different multifamily housing right across the street from the temple and where the medical clinic is at and so forth and so on, and how all that ties in and the critical mass, and then tying it into what our beautification efforts that we're doing in our downtown, and the fact that we're going to have a F&M bank hopefully open up in the downtown. So all this is in our all the planning documents that we had in the past that we're still using with the roundabout. All that is interconnected. Transit-oriented development. Sexy it up, do all these things so that hopefully when they make their decision soon, they'll pick there. And in addition to that, I met with Adam Gray and Manuel Vieira, because Manuel owns that property right there, and he's open to allowing that area to be a platform. And so Adam's going to figure out how he can also help us and assist us, so we'll go from there. Move on to the next item, Bright Development, which is one of the more newest developers here in this area, and you might know off of Dwight over there. They've been very generous. They've been donating towards a lot of efforts here in town. They wanted to donate some more money, and so I came up with a proposal, and we'll see how they respond. But one of our goals is to have a Welcome to Livingston sign. You know, we have the poles currently right there where the railroad tracks are. That was part of our NCU study, remember that?
Of course.
So I don't know what one of those would cost, but even if they just donated a certain amount, we'd start the kitty on this thing and then, you know, sooner or later get it done. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, last year when I wished everybody Happy New Year, I put that old photo that we had, and people were wondering, that sign doesn't exist, where is it? You know, they were looking for that sign actually, so it may be something worthwhile. I think it was good.
Yeah. So, again, I don't know how much they want to donate, but hopefully we can add a few zeros behind whatever they're proposing.
There you go.
And then the next thing is, council, the league is having their annual Christmas dinner in Turlock at 6 o'clock next Thursday. So if you're interested, please let Monica know, because Stephen Qualls is texting me every day.
He does.
And then the next thing is, since our artist is on vacation, you know, our mural artist, we're having our mural dedication probably mid-January, somewhere in there, I don't know, or late January. And so stay tuned for that date, because we want to make that big. And I also want to thank the Aguilar family, because they donated the bronze plaque that will be placed somewhere over there. And then lastly, I wanted to give everybody an update on I've been talking a lot about the electric aviation and how we can really benefit here in the Central Valley. And of course, I want to make sure that Livingston gets a piece of the action. So we had some meetings with Boeing. They came down, they flew down, they were very excited, and they've actually want to become partners, and they've actually given 5 simulators. So these are flight simulators. These are, I mean, the real deal, what they use to train folks, and asking them for more. And I had meetings with Superintendent Zamora, and he got excited and he said yes. So I'm putting a request in to actually have a flight simulator placed here, and then we can have a curriculum. And you're probably all wondering, all this stuff. Well, first of all, there's a shortage of pilots. Just forget about electric plane pilots, just pilots in general. There's like 19,000 pilots that are needed, or a shortage. Number 2, electric aviation is a lot cheaper than using, regular combustion engines. And these planes can take off and land on, 2 parking stalls, okay? And as the rules start to evolve and more charging stations start to, infrastructure, the valley is really positioned to really take advantage of this, because a lot of these little airports that these different communities have, we don't have one, but we'll figure it out here. We can do the training, we can do other things. But just think about it, 9 passenger planes that you don't need to go through security. They can fly folks in from Gustine to the regional airports, and then from the regional airports to the international. So we've asked the governor to establish a working group around this issue, and there seems to be a lot of interest. And a lot of the COGs, the 8 Valley COGs, have actually signed on to this. There will be another presentation at the San Joaquin Valley Partnership on December 13th in Houston between 10 and 3, just in case you guys are interested. So anyways, very exciting, and I do think that there's something in there for our community, so I'm going to keep pushing. So if that's all on my end, unless you have any questions, thank you.
Council, any questions of Mr. Ramirez? Public, any question? If not, Councilmember Baptista, comments? Councilmember Aguilar? You pulled the mic up. I thought you were going to say something. Councilmember Kane? Mayor Pro Tem? I also don't have anything either, so we'll move on to citizens' comments. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council on any items not otherwise on the agenda. Members of the public, when recognized by the mayor, should come forward to the lectern and identify themselves. Comments are normally limited to 3 minutes in accordance with the state open meeting law. No action will be taken by the city council this evening. For items which are on the agenda this evening, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to address the city council as each item is brought up for discussion. Does anybody wish to comment, citizen comment? If not, then citizen comment is now closed. Moving on to consent agenda. Items in the consent calendar are considered routine and non-controversial, will be enacted by one vote unless a separate action requested by the city manager or city council member. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the city council or city manager request that a specific item be removed. We have one item. This is the approval of the warrant register dated November 21. Does anybody wish to make a comment at this? Or if not, I will entertain a motion.
Make motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Councilman Aguilar. Do I have a second? I will second that. May I have roll call, please?
Roll call. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Sammer?
Yes.
Motion approved by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion and potential action items. This is a resolution approving the employment agreement between the City of Livingston and Vanessa Porteo for the position of the Finance Director. Mr. Ramirez?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council and public, I'm,
Oh, I'm sorry, she had her name on there prepared. Okay, all right, sorry.
Dana, did you want? Okay. Dear Mayor and Council and the public, it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you Vanessa Portillo, and I want to talk a little bit about Vanessa. Vanessa actually is the Deputy Finance Director for the City of Lathrop. She lives in the Salida area, not too far from here. What I really like about Vanessa is that she has a lot of great public and private sector experience. She's been working for the City of Lathrop since 2014. And she's also a go-getter. She's actually serves her profession well and is leading the pack because she's actually the currently she is the, let me see here, the Central Valley Chapter Chair. So that's outstanding. And in addition to that, she supervises 8 individuals under her capacity, and so we want to welcome her here to the Livingston family, and thank you for being here this evening. And so, unless council has any questions related to the agreement, we can certainly go over the agreement. Unless you have any
Okay,
questions.
just 1 second. Ms. Porter, do you wish to say anything at this time?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff, members of the public. I am Vanessa Portillo. Like our city manager just mentioned, I've been the Deputy Finance Director at the City of Lathrop for the past 6 years, and I am also serving as the current chapter chair for the California Society of Municipal Services Officers Association. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be tapped by the City of Livingston and serve as your finance director. And I am ready and quite eager to come and just do it the Livingston way, which is give it your all and then some more.
Well, thank you. That was great. Mr. Ramirez, would you
Yeah,
like to
just give a little
highlight
overview.
the key points of the contract?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor. So we're looking at a 3-year contract for Vanessa. Her annual base salary will be $129,612, and the majority of the benefits are the same as all other department heads. They're with the car allowance of $200, and let's see. And then a 3 months severance package. And I believe those are the highlights. Did I leave anything out? No, we got it? Okay.
No, I think that's pretty much it. Council, any comments at this time? Any questions?
Not just in general, welcome to the city of Livingston. I know this position, we've been trying to get somebody in, and Brad, I know you did a great job helping us out, so very happy to have you on board.
Yeah, to me, I'm going to open this up to the public for comment, of course. Just to say the same thing, I know that there's going to be a transitional period, and Mr. Grant will be helping you to transition in. You can't ask for a better person to help you out. I have always had high regard for Mr. Grant as well. So this item is now open to the public. Does anybody wish to ask questions or comment on the on this item, on the contract? Any questions? I don't see anybody coming forward. And this item is now closed to the public. Council, any further discussion or motion? Okay, I will make the motion that we approve the employment. I'm sorry, were you going to say something? Okay, no, go ahead and make the motion, please, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I make motion approving the resolution, approving the employment agreement between the City of Livingston and Vanessa Portillo for the position of Finance Director.
I have a motion by Councilmember Batista. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Kang. May I have roll call, please?
Roll call. Councilmember Baptista.
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Yes.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Yes.
Mayor Summer.
Yes.
Motion approved by a vote of 5-0.
So Vanessa will be starting sometime, I believe, January 6th, now that council has approved it. Welcome, and we'll have a swearing in for you and so forth. So I know that between Brad and Dana and the rest of the team, I mean, we even have the peanut gallery here. Look, they're in the back.
Peanut gallery.
We typically, I mean, that's special. They typically don't show up, so we want to give a round of applause for Nancy and Myra. They're back here as well. So thank you very much.
So you want to explain the peanut gallery? Okay. Well, you brought out in the public, so you might as well let us in on it. But for me, Vanessa, just so you know, Mr. Grant will tell you that outside of city manager, finance office where I spend most of my other time because finance is very crucial. So look forward to working with you. Okay. Okay, this is just, item number 4. This is a resolution approving the purchase of solar wireless in-ground lighted crosswalk system from Silicon Constellations to be installed on crosswalk at F Street and Briarwood. And I see Public Works already coming in. Anthony?
Good evening again, council. The little bit of background on the staff report you have before you. The crosswalk located at F and Briarwood Drive is heavily used by the students walking to and from school. F Street is a popular route for our local residents and commercial traffic. The existing crosswalk is an older wired system that does not work, and parts can no longer be purchased. The Livingston Municipal Code requires formal bidding procedures for all purchases over $10,000 unless formal bidding process is undesirable, impossible, unavailing, or incongruous, as determined by the city manager. The city manager has determined that the formal bidding process for this work is undesirable due to the safety factor for the community. And since Silicon Constellation is the only manufacturer that sells wireless solar-powered crosswalk lights. Staff recommends that council approve the purchase from Silicon Constellation to keep consistency and uniformity as the previous lighted crosswalks purchased have been from Silicon Constellation. Fiscal impact. The lighted crosswalk system will be 100% funded from the Measure V fund.
Council, any questions? This item is now open to the public. Does the public have any questions? If not, we are missing one member. So we'll take a momentary pause. And hopefully we don't hear any singing.
Just real quick, I think it's something that's very needed, especially in that intersection with all the kids walking
Right.
home from school. So definitely I'm glad to see this being approved or discussed.
Yeah, and very good point, Councilmember Aguilar. The other thing is, as you all know, we've actually put together a traffic committee, and so there's quite a bit on your plate that's coming up. I'm not sure when the chief is planning on having it, but probably sometime in mid-January, maybe. I don't know, sooner. And so we have several members on the committee already, and so I mean, we certainly want to tackle these different issues that pop up. So thank you, Chief.
Councilmember King, we had already started the next item on the lighted sidewalk, crosswalk. And do you wish to have their presentation again, or do you have any comments at this time? If not, I had already opened to the public. Nobody commented. So coming back, any further discussion, council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion approving the purchase of a solar wireless in-ground lighted crosswalk system from Silicon Constellations to be installed at the crosswalk at F Street and Briarwood Drive.
I have a motion by Councilman Aguilar. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Aguilar. May I have, I'm sorry.
Garcia.
Garcia. Well, I was already apologizing, so. May I have roll call, please?
Roll call. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar? Yes. Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Samra?
Yes.
Motion approved by a vote of 5-0.
Okay,
Thank you.
Item number 1, this is the, number 5, resolution authorizing the execution of groundwater sustainability plan for Merced groundwater basin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Matt Beeman from MID. He was hearing all the accolades earlier, so please relay him back to the team. But as you know, groundwater is now regulated, and we don't want, we want to make sure that we, control our own destiny. So we have to adopt a groundwater management plan before this, otherwise the state will step in. So Matt's going to give a little presentation, and I believe we're probably the first city to look at adopting this. But
good evening, Mayor, Council, and public. I think a couple of the other member agencies, MIGUS, have adopted. So you guys aren't the first, but still a good step. So I don't have a presentation, but I'll, with that in mind, I'll kind of keep this a little brief but informative, hopefully. So in 2015, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was enacted, and this is a first step in regulating groundwater in California. It required that basins that were DWR classified basins, and if they were critically overdrafted high priority basins, they're required to submit a groundwater sustainability plan by January 31st, 2020. So the Merced groundwater subbasin is critically overdrafted and is a high priority basin. And we're coming up on January 31st. And the resolution today is to adopt the GSP. For the Merced groundwater subbasin, there are 3 groundwater sustainability agencies. There's the Merced Subbasin GSA, Merced Irrigation Urban GSA, and the Turner Island Water District GSA. The City of Livingston is a member agency of the Merced Irrigation Urban GSA. The acronym is MIUGUSA. There's a lot of acronyms, so hopefully that doesn't get too confusing. MIUGUSA includes Merced Irrigation District, City of Livingston, City of Outwater, City of Merced, Winton Water and Sanitary District, Planada Community Services District, and the LeGrand Community Services District. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anyone. Largely, MIGUS's boundaries are Merced Irrigation District's boundaries. The GSP was, per the laws, GSAs are able to submit their own GSP, their own groundwater sustainability plan, or they can couple together with other agencies and submit one all as one. The Merced groundwater subbasin and all the GSAs within it decided to collaborate and do one together. And so by doing this, you're basically preventing the state from coming in and controlling how we use groundwater. So it's leaving control up to local agencies. As part of this, the GSP, you have to run some models. You have to have a good understanding of what's happening with groundwater in the basin. Where's it coming from, and where's it going? These models are basically used to determine or set goals on how we will become sustainable by the year 2040, and then how we will be sustainable for the next 50 years after that. Some of the Sigma requires that there are 6 sustainability indicators that are showing that we're actually being sustainable and implementing appropriately. Those include groundwater levels, making sure they don't drop too far. Groundwater storage, we don't want to use too much water. Things like seawater intrusion, degraded water quality, subsidence, and depletion of interconnected surface waters. Largely within the Merced groundwater subbasin, groundwater storage is not an issue. We have 3 distinct aquifers, and each one has their own management issues within that, but largely storage isn't a particular issue, as well as seawater intrusion. We're not next to the ocean, so that's not something that we have to deal with necessarily. But all of these things have to be addressed in the GSP. So, let's see. Also, within the GSP, you define, each GSA has to define how they're going to implement, and that might include like reduction in use, recharge, basically setting up kind of a plan on how we're going to meet these goals. And I think probably the biggest thing here with the GSP is that the control is within the GSA. It's within the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So even though the City of Livingston is a member agency of MIAGUSA, and even though Merced Irrigation District is a member agency of MIAGUSA, those agencies are not they're not the overarching controllers. MIAGUSA is its own regulatory agency that has its own rules and guidelines and is its own enforcer of all users within its boundaries. And so another part of that is that by adopting the GSP and by implementing and following the sustainability rules, we are in compliance with the state. It means that we're still eligible to receive grant money. It means the state's not going to come in and control our water. But there's no square foot, there's no acre that's left behind, meaning that it doesn't matter who you are necessarily, what piece of ground it is, but you are subject to SGMA. With the 2 exceptions is that de minimis users, which are they use less than 2 acre-feet per year, do not have to have meters. Although cities are still subject to SGMA and city water usage is subject. De minimis users who have like a domestic well and pump less than 2 acre-feet per year aren't required to meter, as well as federal lands aren't required either. There's some next steps. First, we'll adopt the GSP. If the council decides to authorize adoption, then MIAGUSA will, and as long as the other member agencies adopt, then MIAGUSA will adopt on December 11th, holding a public hearing at 9 a.m. at the Merced Irrigation District main office. And then MIAGUSA is the last of the GSAs to adopt. Once all GSAs adopt it, we will submit it to DWR, and they will have a review process. However, once it's adopted, we have to start implementing the GSP right then and there, and it is subject all the way back to 2015. So there's a lot of information there. In the GSP implementation, there are things that we need to do, like you pursue funding opportunities, minimize data gaps, and establish monitoring and like pumping programs, recharge programs. There's construction projects or like the surface water connection project is, I'm assuming, is probably part of that. So those are all important aspects of the GSP. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Very good presentation. Council, any questions? If not, this item is open to the public. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
If I may add too.
Go ahead, please.
The Merced Subbasin GSP is available at mercedsigma.com, and there's an executive summary which is about 15 pages long, and then there's the full GSP, which is substantially longer, but it's filled with information, and there's also a hard copy available at the Merced Irrigation District office. You guys will probably have one too. So there are opportunities for the public and council to review as we implement and move forward.
Thank you.
Catherine Cheryl Rodriguez, Livingston, California. Could you help me? I don't think in like acre feet or acres of water and all that kind of stuff, but the small user, could you put that into a more layperson, family-friendly? It's like, how small is small? A single-family resident well?
So,
How many gallons of number of gallons per month? Like, we can understand as a resident 25,000 gallons a month use on our water bill. Could you translate into plain English the size of a user that would be exempt from metering?
so 1 acre feet of water, just to put it in perspective, is about 325,000 gallons. But in reality, it's what one family of 4 uses in a full year, if that helps out.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? If not, the item is now closed to the public. For me, whoever wants to answer, I get it that water is going to be the new gold here in California. Water is going to be very important, and it's going to be highly regulated. And this may be a silly question, but when this is formed, will each participating agency have a representation there, or how would that? I'm not sure how that part works.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Right now, Miagusa is operated under a memorandum of understanding with all of those member agencies. We have monthly board meetings, and there's certainly opportunity for representatives from each agency to be there. We want, realistically, we want you guys to be there. We want public to be there. Everyone knows it's a challenge. That's trying to kind of do the policy part of it. The input's definitely necessary.
So, if this is formed, and they make decisions, they can impose its regulations on the other jurisdiction, other cities. Those can be, they can force regulations on the cities and to say, hey, you have to do that.
Yeah.
That can happen, correct?
Yes, it can happen.
So we're ceding a lot of, and I know, I get it. We're ceding a lot of authority over to the GSA, correct?
Yes, this is the first time that there's been any groundwater regulation like this. Realistically, all cities and all of the CSDs will, the entire GSA, our GSA Miagusa will have to reduce pumping.
Yeah, so, and just for the sake of the public, right now we allow 25,000 gallons a month for base. It can come down and says, no, for the purpose of sustainability, you can no longer do that. They can dictate our management plan, correct?
Well, yes, and the option B is to allow the state to come in and do it for us.
No,
So
no,
it's
no.
the same.
I get it. I get it, but I'm just letting everybody know that,
Yeah,
you know, what it's gonna be. Cities are gonna have very little control over its own water management. It's gonna be more of sent up a little more.
Yeah, and you made a great point, and this is one of the reasons why our city is positioned in a very, very good position, because over the years, we've looked at diversifying our water portfolio here locally. So our ultimate goal is to not depend 100% on groundwater, because that's what we depend on right now. And so we all, you know, of course, Matt probably doesn't know, but we've been working with Hisham and John on, in later years, finding a way to tap into the Merced River so that we can have an option of having surface water. And so having that dual availability is going to, you know, really put us where we need to be. And then not only that, but part of the sustainability piece is to, you know, address subsidence and having, you know, doing water percolation ponds. And I mean, one of the things that we've been looking at already, anticipating all these things for the last 6-7 years, is we have our industrial wastewater treatment ponds. Right now, it's being decommissioned. Foster Farms is not going to be using those anymore. Well, can we actually pump water in there and percolate that water into the groundwater, you know, without it escaping back into the river? I mean, we got to figure all those things out, but there's opportunities, and so we're going to be looking at that, and there's grants, and so this makes this very key.
Thank you, Ms. And the reason I had mentioned about the control and groundwater and all that is there is a component in our water plan, like Ms. Ramirez said, to work with MID to get surface water. So on a critically drought years, maybe, depending what the allocation is, we can supplement through our surface water, which will be, it's still going to be regulated heavily by the feds and everybody else, but at least you can supplement something there, you know, so you don't get that 6,000 gallons of whatever it could be, you know. So it could be a little better on our folks too. That's why that one component is important. So council, any further comments? If not, I will entertain a motion at this time.
Make a motion authorizing the executive execution of groundwater sustainability plan for the Merced groundwater basin.
I have a motion by Councilmember Aguilar. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Garcia. Got it right, didn't I? May I have roll call, please?
Roll call. Councilmember Baptista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Summer?
Yes.
Motion approved by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, item number 6, this is the resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Train US Incorporated for construction of certain energy-saving heat and air conditioning systems and energy-saving lighting systems to be located at various city facilities, and to authorize the execution of the lease purchase for agreement with the U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance. Mr. Ramirez.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Well, after about a year of hard work, and I thank the utility stakeholders and the council and the public, we finally come to the point where we got some financing for this, and this is actually having a very positive impact in the utility rates, because it's going to save us close to $2.6 million. And Reggie from Train is here to give the little presentation on this particular project that I'm anxious to get going on. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council and people of the City of Livingston. It has been a while, and I've been in front of this council a number of times with similar types of presentations. I'm going to be brief. I can certainly take any questions as we go, and or at the end is fine. Oops. So the agenda, I just want to go over some of the goals that we started with here. A little progress on our process. We're going to review a little bit about the infrastructure that we saw when we first started, as well as give you some proposed energy program recommendations and guaranteed performance and results. So we're going to go through this fairly quickly. When we first started with the city of Livingston, it became clear that the city was interested in really addressing their aging infrastructure, specifically in their HVAC, really identifying the energy-consuming infrastructure and the benefits of an energy strategy. But it was really focused on the aging infrastructure that we'll have some pictures of a little later. And we also wanted to further your sustainability goals. We just heard a lot about sustainability from MID and on the water side. So we wanted to further those efforts. And we also wanted to provide a financial model and a financial viable project that you guys can move forward with and feel good about. So just a recap of the process. I was here, almost a year ago now, talking a little bit about our preliminary results, and that we anticipated a capital investment at about $2.6 million, plus or minus 20%. Savings projection of about $264,000, plus or minus 20% on that. And that was approved by the council to move forward with our what we call a letter of commitment, which basically authorizes us to move forward and finalize the scope and the savings, complete a design and the pricing, secure firm installation cost, and finalize the pro forma that we have worked with Brad pretty extensively and Jose pretty extensively to refine. Like I said, first of all, I want to thank the people that have helped us through this process, Anthony and Tony, Brad, of course, and Jose. You guys have been very helpful with pulling all this information together, and it's been a real team effort. I will say that the Public Works Department has done a stellar job of keeping most of the HVAC equipment, the lighting, up to snuff and keeping it operational. Unfortunately, it's past its useful life. You've got some aging equipment of over 30 years. It's already past their useful life. You've got localized controls, basically thermostats that are controlling that HVAC equipment, which is not very efficient at this particular point in time. You've got T8s and T12s, lighting efficient, very inefficient lighting throughout your buildings. You've also got high irrigation water usage, as well as some antiquated landscape irrigation controls, just to name a few. So this is a picture of what's existing today. What's existing today. Utility overview. So what we did, we came in with our engineers, and we basically looked at every one of your buildings and how it was being operated, and when those peaks demand was. These are just some examples here. So some people call them rug samples, but in this particular case, what you're seeing here is a year's worth of data on each one of these buildings. And so we matched that up with our savings calculations. I ran it through our models to understand how you use energy today, and we then put our engineers to work to say, how do we save that energy that you're wasting at this particular point? So just an overview of the cost that you're expending. You spend about $413,000. City spends about $413,000 a year with MID. About $267,000 with Pacific Gas and Electric. About $109 in water cost. $109,000, sorry. For a total spend of about $775,000 a year in utility costs alone. So what we did was we looked at each one of these buildings on the left-hand side, some are well stations, and we put together an energy matrix. So if you look at the top, you'll see HVAC controls, variable frequency drives, interior lighting, exterior lighting, irrigation, solar, and then on the left-hand side, all the facilities themselves. So this particular matrix shows which buildings were doing lighting, which buildings were doing HVAC, which facilities were affecting their variable frequency drives, interior lighting, and so on and so forth. So we are having about 61 individual measures at your facilities here in the city. So what are those measures? I'll go back. So when we look at lighting, both interior and exterior, you'll see that many of the buildings are going to get a lighting retrofit. And so in that lighting retrofit, we're going to change from your T8s and your T12s to your LED technology, saving a lot of money for the city itself. We're going to have occupancy and daylighting sensors where applicable. These lights will be Title 24 compliant. And if you have read anything about LEDs, they've got about a 10-year, over a 10-year, a lot of times warranty. So they've got a long, long life. On many of the buildings here, including the barbershop, city hall, city council chambers here, we anticipate and will be putting in new packaged rooftop units and HVAC units, which will reduce the operational cost and the maintenance cost. Extend your, like I said, you're over 30 years old in these pieces of equipment that are meant to last 15 to 20. Throughout the city, we'll be putting in a new energy management system, so Anthony and his staff can actually operate them from a remote location.
On Senior Citizen Center, we're leasing that, correct? Yes. So wouldn't the landlord be responsible?
I'll look at that. And that's a thermostat. So essentially, There's no HVAC, I don't believe, is going to go into that particular piece of it. It's basically, so Anthony and those guys can actually control the heat. Make sense? I want to make sure that that was the case. So that's not a big item. Sorry. Throughout your parks, we're going to install smart controllers that will help save water throughout your parks. You've got beautiful parks, but I think they may be overwatered a bit. And what we're going to do is to retro-commission the existing systems as well as put new controllers in and make sure that this is a web-based system and make sure that it's actually saving water and still keeping the parks as green as they are right now. Also, we're going to be putting variable frequency drives on these particular wells and ramping them up and down per your schedules. Also, we're going to be putting in some solar PV at Gallo Park, Public Works, Max Foster, and here at the police station. So what does that do? I just already went through all of those those measures. But essentially, we've got a $2.9 million project that saves over $218,000 guaranteed, with a cumulative cash flow of $3.1 million. So this is a project that's going to help the finances of the city and self-fund all these measures that we've talked about here earlier. So I went through pretty quickly, but I certainly, if you guys want to answer questions, I'd love to answer them.
One thing that I would like to add, Reggie, is, and you know, this was staff, we decided that in order to, if we were going to embark to this project, as council has allowed us to, is that we wanted to make sure that we kept apples with apples and oranges with oranges. Where other municipalities just kind of lump everything together, we wanted to make sure that we separated everything by fund. So, you know, general fund, water and sewer, you know, and so forth and so on. So that was very important to us. And then this will allow us to really focus in and make sure that there's no challenges in the future as far as if we lump everything together, say, oh, well, isn't this fund supplementing this other fund, et cetera. So thank you very much for cooperating with us and being patient with us and moving us along. So thank you very much, Reggie, and thank you, Brad.
Council comments?
I just want to ask a question. The various city facilities, can you tell me more about the barber shop? What are we dealing with there?
So the barber shop, the current we own the building, and the actual HVAC units on there is on its last leg, and so you know, we're currently leasing it out, and because we're leasing it out, we're responsible for the you know, providing heating and air. So that's included in this project list to get done.
It's a very small unit, tiny.
Anything else?
Quick question. In regards to the interest rate for the financing, this is still a low. I know I attended the last meeting. It's still between 2% and 3%.
Yes, matter of fact, Brad probably can answer that particular question. He's been working with the financing group.
Thanks, Reggie. The city, with Train's assistance through their financial group, received, I think it was 3 or 4 proposals. We actually reached out to F&M Bank for a proposal, And the best proposal that we received was 2.734% commitment through December 29. The next closest one was about 100 basis points higher, plus just about everybody else charges fees to do it, whereas the one that we're going to recommend that we go with, which is U.S. Bank, there are no fees. So we think it's extremely competitive. U.S. Bank, it's kind of their business, you know? And so they're very good at this, whereas some of the other ones, they kind of do it, but it's not kind of their bread and butter. So that's the interest rate.
Is the interest rate also included in the total project cost?
Yes, that's the way
Yes.
we modeled it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the other thing that we did is, for some of you who follow the Federal Reserve very closely, I'm sure, they did just drop the rates the other day. And so just to make sure we got the best rate, we reached out to Train and said, can you kind of check with your folks and make sure that we get the benefit of that rate reduction? It dropped down about like that, and then the next day it went back up. But we still are committed to the 2.734, so we're good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good ask, and we went to them and asked them if they could work with them.
In regards to the solar panels, I know the presentation mentioned a few possible sites. We still haven't committed to a site yet, right? In regards to the solar panels.
Yeah, the current solar panels, for instance, at Joseph Gallo would be on the parking lot, so they wouldn't be eating up any of the park space. So it'll be on the parking lot section. And then here at City Hall, back in this area, there would be a section as well. And then at PD, a small portion. And then at Public Works, I'm not sure about, on top of the building, yeah.
Right, right.
Okay. Mr. King? You have any question? Mayor Pro Tem? This item is now open to the public. Does anybody wish to comment?
Jose Moran, 945 Parkview Drive. Just a quick question. I know that I've been seeing a lot of information about solar panels with the cities, with school districts. I know there's some cities that they still have a lot of problems with their previous or their current solar panels in regards to maintenance. Is this now the city's responsibility to keep maintain the solar panels, or are we gonna have somebody else come in and clean them up and make sure they're efficient? Are there measures to know if are they being efficient or not? You know.
Yeah.
Great question. It would be the responsibility of the cities to keep them clean and maintained. We'll be doing efficiency tests to make sure that it is producing what we said it was going to produce for a 3-year period with a guarantee for production. So, you know, if we're not getting that production, we're going to be looking to say, are we maintaining it? We're cleaning them, because they can get dirty, especially in agricultural communities. They have a soiling factor. So we'll need to clean those. The solar installations that we have aren't tremendous. I mean, there's not going to be a huge burden, I don't think, on the, and there are companies that do that, so.
Yeah, it's the solar component is a small component as it relates to the overall, efficiency projects that we have listed. However, we would be responsible for that. And one of the things that was very important for us that we communicated to Train is that we wanted to see, we have a monitor or something that we could see every day, what our savings are and what's happening. So that way it's not out of sight, out of mind. We want to make sure that it's in sight and in mind.
And quick, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if I can just ask real quick, and this, I'm just assuming, and hopefully it is, the interest rate is fixed, is not gonna, right?
Yes, that's correct. It's fixed.
And the guaranteed savings is 218,000 a year, correct?
That's correct.
And that's for how long?
With 3 years.
3 years? Okay. And
It actually calculates out at $242,000, but we discounted a bit to make sure that we made our guarantee. So it will actually be higher than that.
so what happens if it doesn't meet that 218? What's the
write-
process? What?
We write the check for the difference.
Okay, so you write the check for guaranteed for 3 years,
That's correct.
and say on the fourth year it flips, then what?
If you want to, we can extend the guarantee period, but that will be a charge for us to do measurement and verification to
Okay.
move forward with that.
I think this item is still open to the public. Does anybody else wish to come forward? If not, this item is now closed to the public. Council, further comments? All of my questions got asked by others, so let's leave it at that,
Okay.
so. Council, if there's no further discussion, does anybody wish to make a motion? It's too long.
I make a motion for the resolution of the City Council authorizing the execution of a contract with Train US Incorporated for the construction of certain energy-saving heat and air conditioning systems and energy-saving light systems to be located in various city facilities, and authorizing the execution of a lease purchase agreement with US Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance Incorporated.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Baptista. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Councilmember Aguilar. May I have roll call, please?
Roll call. Councilmember Batista?
Yes.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Samra?
Yes.
Motion approved by a vote of 5-0.
Just real quick, I just want to give a thank you to the utility stakeholders that participated in this process. And this was also something they agreed on and discussed in length. So thank you.
Okay, council, any further business? If not, we are in adjournment. Thank you very much.